I recently had a doctor tell me to my face, yeah, I just sold my practice. My check's sitting right there in that drawer. It's for $1.7 million. That one decision, selling his property without doing a 1031 exchange, cost him $700,000. It's like a $700,000 mistake. And I just couldn't help it. I couldn't hold it in. I was like, why didn't you do a 1031 exchange? And he just said, well, it's complicated. I don't really know a lot about that. I don't know who to really call and talk to. Because he didn't know how to do a 1031 exchange, that guy lost $700,000. And that's a guy I like. One of the problems with 1031 exchanges is that I don't think the benefits get spread evenly socioeconomically. I think that well-off people and rich people with advisors know how to do them and know what the benefits are of them and know why you go into them and know how you come out of them, how you do exit strategies. And a lot of other people don't. This post is an hour and 15-minute conversation with James Callejas from IPX 1031 Exchange out in San Francisco. He's been in the trenches doing 1031 exchanges for 27 years. Their firm does like 400 1031 exchanges a month. They've done just a ton of 1031 exchanges, and he was really one of the most knowledgeable people I've talked to in the space. And I've talked to at least 15, 20, 1031 exchange custodians over the years. We had a really good conversation. What we tried to get into this post is the ins and outs. Why you get into a 1031 exchange, how you do a 1031 exchange, what the exit strategy is. My firm, Bedrock, we're an exit strategy. What I mean by that is we're the thing you buy when you sell the piece of garbage that you've been holding on to forever and you're trying to improve your cash flow. We're the thing you buy if you want to hold on to the control of your asset instead of kind of giving the control over to someone else. We're the one you buy if you want to say, hey, I still want to stay in an asset class that I understand. I want to stay in single family residential. I don't want to go commercial. I don't want to go syndication. I don't want to go REIT. I want to hold on to my asset and actually still control it and own it and be able to finance on it, be able to sell it when I want. I still want the control. We're an exit strategy. But 1031 exchanges are complex and you need an expert to get all that stuff done, to draft the paperwork, to give you advice along the way. James was an enormous asset to us as far as talking through and being able to hop on camera to help people understand how to use 1031 exchanges. It should not just be an asset that rich people benefit from. It's a part of the tax code. It's a legal part of the tax code. It's a useful part of the tax code. We should all benefit from it. And as you see this interview, you'll see that there's actually a lot of reciprocal benefits to the entire economy. Big things that actually are good because 1031 is in the tax code. I hope you love this interview. James Callejas from IPX 1031 Exchange joined us for an hour and 15 minutes. It is fascinating. Everything you could want to know about 1031 exchanges. Part one. I really appreciate you taking the time.
My pleasure. Happy to be here. It's very easy for me to come on to podcasts and talk 1031. I've been doing this for a long time, and helping out the investors truly is what I like to do.
Let's do a little personal. I'm married. I've got a wife and 4 kids. I'm 42. I'm a professional investor, mostly in real estate, but we've got 7 companies that span from like real estate to like we have some 20 Turo cars and we rehab properties in Airbnb. How did you get into this?
So, to just follow what you did, I'm married. I'm 54. I've got one daughter. She recently got married. And so we have a son-in-law now as well. And we're empty nesters. She's been out of the house. She's over 30 years old. And got 2 fur babies at the crib that take up all kinds of attention and time. To answer your question, I was at a college. I started working at Merrill Lynch down in Southern California. I am from Northern California, so born and raised San Francisco. Went down to Southern California after I went to Cal, after going to Cal, and worked at Merrill Lynch for a few years. And it wasn't easy because this is 30 years ago. And 30 years ago, I looked like I was probably 12 years old in that space, and trying to get business was really challenging. So I had a friend who was working, and it wasn't called IPX back then, it was called Western American Exchange. And she said, "What are you doing?" I said, "Working." She goes, "You like it?" I go, "It's fun, but it doesn't really work well for what I'm trying to do." And she goes, "I think you'd be perfect for the job." Went up, went into the interview. Boss said, "Do you know what a 1031 exchange is?" And I said, "No." And he said, "You're hired." And that was the story. He goes, she vouched for you. We went to the same college. You're from here. We want you. And that's all I got. And that was in 1998 in July. I turned 27 with this firm in July. So it's been quite a roller coaster ride.
Holy cow. Holy cow. You said you went to college. What college did you go to?
Cal Berkeley,
I had some incredible pizza up in Berkeley the other day. We just
Blondies
happened
or Zacks or what?
Cheeseboard Pizza Collective. It's this, I don't know, there was a huge line. We went through Berkeley for some stuff, and there was this huge line. And so we're like, okay, it should be good. But it turns out I had read about that place in a periodical. Like I had read about Cheeseboard Pizza Collective because they only make one pizza every day and they sell out. But we were doing out of it, north of it, and we're headed to the Oakland airport. And so
Okay.
we were starving. And so we just pulled off in Berkeley. We were like, College Town's got food. And so we pulled off and we saw this enormous line. I'm saying the line was probably 400 people. It was huge. And so we're like, that obviously that place has got food. And so we waited in the line, had some great slices of pizza from this kind of unique cheeseboard pizza collective.
Clearly not there when I went to school there because that was over 30 years ago. And our
Yeah,
staple back then was Blondies or Zacks. And this is probably
yeah.
not right next door to the, was it off the freeway exit pretty close to?
Honestly, I can't even tell you. We were starving. I
Yeah.
saw a guy threaten another guy with a machete. It was a wild day. I was like, what is
Oh,
happening?
are you sure
But
that wasn't Oakland?
it did feel there was some definite Oakland vibes that were happening in that experience. So on our end, we just finished a 1031 exchange. We had a client 1031 out in Northern California of a $4 million commercial piece of real estate. And his goal was, hey, he's going into retirement. He wanted to improve his cash flow if possible. He wanted my team to take over day-to-day management because he was going to move out of his office building at some point. So he's like, hey, we want your team to take over day-to-day management. And so basically, he tasked me and my team for, hey, find me properties that we can 1031 into, help me run through the 1031 exchange. And then, you guys manage them from here out so I can go to, Greece and Italy and stuff like that. So we just did like a $4 million 10 property 1031 exchange in my region. And we're always lining those up. What do you wish people knew about 1031s before they called you? Like, what do you wish people knew that you're just like, I really wish people just knew this already?
I wish they called me when they first started thinking about it rather than calling me when they put the property already on the market or it's in contract. That would be the number one because I want to, number one, determine whether or not it does qualify for an exchange. And usually that's pretty easy. And number two, make sure that the taxpayer that wants to do the exchange is actually the taxpayer that owns the property. And sometimes that is the case and sometimes it isn't. And when it isn't, there's no way to fix things in a short window without some risk, at least in most scenarios. So I would like people to contact me prior to listing the property for sale. We can determine those two things. And most importantly, what's the exit strategy? What do you want to do? Because you have a limited time frame to complete this 1031 exchange. And if you don't have a plan, you might struggle, you might fail, you might settle, you might not really like what you get out of the 1031 exchange. It should be planned in advance.
I think most of the people that watch our channel understand 1031 exchanges, but if you could give like a top level view for anyone who's watching, what are they talking about? What is a 1031 fundamentally? What are the moving pieces?
So really, I like to keep things simple. The 1031 exchange is an internal revenue code that's been around for 100 years, but basically it's when you sell and buy real estate. And as long as you use all the money and buy of equal or greater value to what you sell, you're in a position to pay zero in capital gains tax. So selling and buying investment, real estate, you do it correctly, you follow the guidelines, you pay zero in capital gains tax.
Okay. And just so everyone understands, is that zero in taxes or zero in capital gains, federal taxes only? What should they expect? Should they expect
So
state taxes? Should they
so
expect
there's
fees?
Yeah, there's four ways that you can get tax on the sale of investment property. Number one, federal tax. Number two, state tax. Number three, depreciation recaptures the write-off that you've taken. They can recapture 25% of that when you sell the asset. And then there's also Obamacare or healthcare or whatever you want to call it, but that's been around since 2012. And each way will hit you hard. Some states don't have state tax. If you're selling bare land, there's no depreciation recapture. And if you don't hit certain thresholds, you might not be subject to healthcare tax. But I got to tell you, if you have significant appreciation and there is a structure, you're going to get hit by all four. And in certain states, in particular in California, the state tax is number one in the nation. It's going to either be 9, 10, 11, 12, or 13. When you add things up, it's usually between 30 to 40% in capital gains tax.
No, for sure. I can see people all day long getting hit with 20% federal, 13.3% California, 3.8% Obamacare.
And the depreciation recapture at a
Oh yeah,
25% clip.
recapture depreciation for sure. We work with a lot of people who are like who bought their stuff back in the 70s, right?
Oh, yeah.
And so luckily their depreciation is not that much. If you bought it for 100 grand, you wrote off or 120 grand, so the depreciation amount's simple. So you're depreciating off 100 grand 27 and a half years. So it's okay, you've depreciated this for 100 grand, right? So that's not the moon, but it can be really substantial if it's a newer purchase. That's a
Yeah.
valid point.
What if I bought it in 2008, 9, and 10 when everything was a fire sale, everything was a short sale, but still it was $500,000 and I fully depreciated the asset or I depreciated half of it or whatever the numbers are. And now I got to give back 25% of that. It could be huge.
Absolutely, absolutely. If you've bought with higher initial amounts, for sure. Who is your ideal client? If someone's watching today and you're like, "Hey, that person, should call me." Who's your ideal person to talk to?
I think the person that really has a nightmare property and they think that there's no plan to get out of that. And I talk to so many different people that have underperforming assets or they're just being a landlord has just driven them insane for a number of different reasons. And I think that's the person that, hey, you don't have to just pay taxes. You could unload this nightmare and get something that could double, triple, quadruple your income, get you a new depreciation schedule, get you out of active management, get you into something that makes sense, perhaps buy a dream home or a second. I mean, there's so many different things, but the ideal client is somebody who has an underperforming asset or an asset that is driving them crazy and don't know what to do.
What do you see most come across your desk? Is it people who have underperforming assets or people who are like repositioning assets into vacation homes or dream homes, stuff like that?
So if we're doing dream home, vacation home, I'd say maybe 15 to 20% of our clients do something like that. I think it's particularly in California because we have such strict tenant friendly rights out here. Many landlords like to unload their assets because the tenants have many rights, and that's from a multifamily and residential perspective. From the commercial perspective, I mean, after COVID, office and retail and hospitality has been challenging, but industrial and agricultural been just okay, it's time. This no longer works for us in our life. We're getting older. We want something different. We want something passive, and we don't want to pay the taxes, or we want to estate plan the tax. So it really depends which customer we're talking to, because residential and commercial will be completely different in most scenarios.
So I'm interested to know, I'm going to repeat that question one more time. What percentage do you think comes across your desk? What are you seeing the most often? You said about 15% vacation home, second home. What's the bulk of what you see every day?
It's a great question. It really depends. Is it residential or commercial property? If it's residential investment property for a baby boomer, we'd see them going into passive assets. And we're going to see about 25% of our clients doing that. So we have 25% for that on the residential side. We have 20% going into a dream home or a second home. And then we have, I'd say, the remainder going to move up in terms of superior investment properties. Okay, I had the condo rental, now I want a duplex, or I had the 4 unit building, now I want an 8 unit building, or I had the 12 unit building, now I want a couple of commercial assets. So you're going to see a mix, and I'd say over 50% of our clients are moving to superior investments. And quite frankly, of that 55 to 60%, whatever the number actually is, I'd say 40% of them are leaving the state of California to get into better cash flowing assets.
Yeah, well, that's our business. I worked in financial advice about a decade ago. And what I was seeing was like I was looking at our clients' balance sheets. In financial advice, you sit down with someone you don't know anything. You may have a form that they've filled out, but they've on their balance sheet, they're like, hey, I've got $500,000 in stocks, bonds, mutual funds. I've got $3.5 million in real estate. And as I sat down for a decade, just looking at people's balance sheets in Northern California specifically, I was doing a lot of work in Walnut Creek and the Palo Alto area, San Jose. I would just have the same conversation over and over. Tell me about the real estate. And they're like, oh, it's doing good. It's fine. I don't really want to mess with that. And what I realized over the years they meant was, I don't know how to deal with it. Right. As soon as I started peeling back that onion a little bit, tell me about it. I'm curious. I love real estate. I've always been a real estate guy. Tell me about your cash flows. And they're like, there really isn't any. I'm like, what are you talking about? There isn't any. This is $3.5 million of assets. This is more than half your net worth here. What do you mean there's no cash flow? And they're like, rents really haven't kept up with appreciation. I just don't know what to do with it. And effectively, I realized that at least 70% of the people who have real estate that was designed to be a retirement asset, right? Like they bought it in the 70s because they wanted to retire on the money in the 2000s, had turned into effectively a legacy asset. Like they were just waiting to die. It was doing them no good on the day to day. And they were just waiting to die so that it step up in basis to their kids because they're like, hey, I can't do anything with it. It's paying its bills or it's not paying its bills. And so I just saw that so much, probably $200 million of assets in 10 years of just looking at people's balance sheets. And I was like, there's got to be a better way. And so what I found, and maybe you've got a better solution for this, I realized that there was really no great way to do it. They can either sell it and move to a different market and have to figure out how to manage stuff in another market, right? Or they could sell it and they could go into some other investment medium like a REIT or a syndication or a twoplex or a fourplex. But no matter what, they were either giving their property to a company and trusting that the return would be good, or giving their property to a company and getting shares of the company, like a REIT style investment. But a lot of times they were putting their property into someone else's hands. And I was like, most people I know want to keep an asset that they can understand. So what do you see the most common when people are trying to get better cash flow? When people are trying to get out of a California market where the landlord laws are so poor, right? What asset class do you see people moving into that actually they're having success with?
If we're talking about people who are buying a long time ago, it's usually the same thing every single time. And your story rings so true. And I could tell you like thousands of stories of people who bought property in the 60s, the 50s, the 70s, and think it's a cash cow, think it's a great investment property. And it's really a horrible piece of investment property. No more depreciation. Cash flow is subject to rent control. The appreciation is massive, but the return on the investment no longer makes sense. It's fully amortized, so there's no more loan and equity buildup or write-off, and it just sits there and they manage it. Then insurance goes up because of the fires, or there's something else that happens because the political tenant rights just make things worse, and the electrical has to be redone, and then the soft story requirements, and then the list goes on, Jeremy. But the same story comes out. This is a great piece of investment property. And then when you show them that it really isn't, and that the return is under 1.5%, and it really doesn't pencil well at all. And I talk to them, I go, look, you're 72 years old, you recently retired, so your income has taken a deep dip. Wouldn't it be cool to have supplemental income that made your lifestyle so much easier? And I think the number one thing that these clientele are doing is going into commercial assets. So anybody that owns resi property is going to go into a commercial asset at this point, and they're not going to manage it either because they have no liking to do anything like that. So I would say the DST and triple net assets are the exit strategy for these clientele. The triple net, you're still going to have a little bit of management responsibility. The DST, you won't. Yes, it's going to be in somebody else's hand. I see these clientele going into conservative assets. So you're going to stick in the massive multifamily asset that's recently built. You're going to maybe go into industrial, self-storage, senior housing, student housing, but limited to that, nothing that has true risk. And if you're going to go into triple net assets, you're going to go with a company that you truly have confidence in. And we used to think that was the pharmaceutical company, but as we've seen the Rite Aid file bankruptcy, as we've seen a lot of Walgreens and CVS closes, and we've seen COVID revealed office, retail, hospitality is risky as well. We've seen more of our clientele stick with the conservative assets, still double or triple their income because they're making nothing on what they currently have, and go into
Yeah.
something that's going to grow in some markets and just really not have the tenants, the trash, the toilets, the termites, the taxes, all the terrible T's, but an increase in cash flow, the supplemental income they're looking for, no management responsibility, and the estate planning tool that they want, so they don't have to worry about that asset in the future, which still gets a step up in basis. We see that happen, I'd say, for that client that we're talking about 80% of the time. Easy.
Yeah, and that's what I was looking for. Like when I was in financial advice, right? I was having all these conversations. I sat down with my team, like the executives, and I just said, "Hey, what solutions do you guys have for this? I'm seeing hundreds of millions of dollars of this trash come across my desk with all these problems you're describing." That is the exact thing. And what I realized more than anything, I released a video this week on the channel that was talking about using historical purchase prices to calculate your current ROIs. Yeah, I bought it for $70,000. It's renting for $2,000 a month. That's a great ROI. I'm like, it's not.
Wow.
Like it's worth $2.5 million and you're renting it for $2,000 a month. And after your expenses, you're getting killed. But these people had just like gone nose deaf to their rentals. And I was just like, what is happening? So instead of starting a commercial company, we started Bedrock. That's the big company that I run, like the biggest of the seven. And basically it was, hey, let's keep you in something you're comfortable with. Let's keep you in single family residential, but let's improve the market. Because right now, like we can buy at we use GRMs a lot, gross rent multiplier. So you take the purchase price, divide it by the rent, and that gives you a number that we can just boil the whole market down to. In Northern California, our GRMs are like between 250 and 350. Southern California, a little bit less than that. So that means you're paying $250 per dollar of rent you're buying, or $350 per dollar of rent you're buying. It's a good top level hopper. Is this even a deal worth considering? And so we're buying right now in Oklahoma City, for example, really big blue collar diversified workforce. We're buying at like 130 to 150 GRM, so a little less than half of California, right? Plus we're buying in like better landlord friendly states, more conservative state, more conservative jurisdiction, 4 week evictions, 5 week evictions. We've bought a lot in Ocala, Florida, like outskirts of Orlando. Those went through the roof, and now we're getting out of those because of insurance price premiums. And then the problem with single family residential is it's a pain in the ass to manage. Gonna call spade a spade. All the T's you said. I've never heard that statement before, but I loved it. And as soon as I watch this video, I'm gonna write that down. Termites, tenants, taxes,
Trash, trash,
trash,
toilets.
toilets. Well, was there more than those five?
Those we can't put on the air because they get dirty.
Uh-oh. So I was like, that was awesome. T T T T T. I love that. I love that so much. But what we said is, hey, if people want to stay in residential because they understand residential, right? I think that the nightmare is always, hey, I'm going to get involved in this big multifamily and the syndication's going to go under, right? Or the DST is going to blow up and they're going to manage it wrong. Because we've seen so many multifamilies that didn't factor in an interest rate increase like we've had that have gone under, right? And so we said, hey, let's just keep it simple. Let's figure out a way to help people stay in single family. And we'll offer like a business management service. So we'll help them find, vet, and buy the property. And then we'll offer a business management service. We'll keep your books. We'll deal with the property manager. We'll let you know what's going on. We'll handle the day to day. It's still your property. You still own it 100%. We're not offering partnership with a pro here. It's just, hey, you come to us if you want to stay in single family residential, if you like that asset class. And by doing that, they can still claim that appreciation. They can buy leverage. They can buy cash. We've had really good luck. But you're absolutely right. It's still an obnoxious asset class. So if someone wants something much more passive, it's not the right asset class. But if they want an asset class that they really understand, we really like it. Especially if they're like, hey, I like knowing that if you suck at this, I can take it over and deal with it. They can always like step in and say, hey, Jeremy, you guys have been great, but it's not for us. We're just going to manage it ourselves. We can still do that if it's still in single family residential. If it's still in a product category that they own 100%, control 100%, they get to make the calls. Those are really our clients.
I think that's a good point, Jeremy, because when I first started talking about the exit strategy, I was talking about people who bought in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. What about the guy or gal that bought in the 90s or the 2008, 9, 10, 11? They're not really into the larger asset. They really still want control and they're very happy with the single family resident, but they don't know where to go. And they definitely don't want to buy in California. California, you make a ton of appreciation, but then you learn that it's grueling to be a landlord out here. And maybe it's time to move that asset class to somewhere with superior cash flow, without a tenant friendly state environment, and if you don't have to manage it. And maybe you can ride that wave of appreciation in that area that I'm sure that you guys do the research. This is an up and coming area. We predict between 10 to whatever percent in terms of appreciation at the end when we eventually unload the asset, and you can exchange again into the next great opportunity. So I think there definitely is a market sector for that particular client that's still in their 30s, 40s, 50s, even early 60s. The ones that I was mentioning, you're talking late 60s too. Believe
Yeah.
it or not, I did one for a 104 client. She still went to the office 2 times a week. I don't think anybody at the firm is ever going to beat that record, but she was 104 years old. And the funny thing about that,
104.
104. The funny thing about that is they'd sold some industrial asset in San Francisco for like $50 million. And I talked to the nephews because they were the other owner that has tenants in common with this lady. And I go, guys, why didn't you just wait till she passed to get the step up in basis? Because you were going to inherit as well on this. And they go, we've been waiting for 12 years. We're done waiting. And I'm like, this is a trooper. And she's still alive at 106.
That's crazy. 104 is that's some longevity, man.
And she's still going to the office.
Well, yeah, my previous boss is a guru muckety muck, right? And he was very against retirement. He was very against it. His retire means like to put out of use or something, the etymology. And he was very against. He's like, you got to do something that you enjoy that keeps you active because as soon as you like just sit at home all day on your couch, you die. He's your body starts falling apart. You've got to be moving to keep your brain engaged and all that stuff. 104 is wild to go to the office twice a week. But yeah, that's what I'd like to do. I build businesses partially because when I don't want to work anymore, I want to have all the passive income still. I love the commercial approach. That's not my approach, but everyone has their specialty. Like we like keeping it, there's 5 income lines, there's 4 expense lines. Single family residential is just simple, right? It's straightforward. You know what you're getting into. For the most part, it's great. Every once in a while, it does blow up, right? Every once in a while, you just get the wrong tenant, wrong property manager, wrong management mitigation, and then we really have to step in heavy when things go wrong. But our contract is, hey, we'll do all the work no matter how much it is. So we're really trying to pick on the front end. We're trying to pick on the front end what we're buying. Effectively, here's my gripe. My bedrock would be called a turnkey house, right? So it's we're helping people find, vet, and buy single family residential. So that puts us in the world of Rich Uncle or Real Wealth Network, or there's a couple turnkey houses that specialize in single family residential. My problem with that product is I just kept seeing people buy single family residentials that weren't vetted well, right? That were vetted like garbage. Hey, this piece of garbage in Detroit is $53,000 cash. It'll bring in $900 a month. It's like, yeah, right. That is never gonna rent. That's never what you're gonna want. What you just bought is a grenade for your portfolio. And so I saw enough of that. I said, hey, I like single family residential, but I freaking hate the way it's being marketed as a passive asset. What you've got to have is you've got to have a business manager in that equation, someone who sets up the LLC, who keeps the books, who hires the property manager, who keeps them honest. And you've got to have someone who's like doing the day to day, and that usually falls on ownership. And so what we did is we said, hey, we'll do all the work for $1,000 a year, but if we can't get you to a 4% cash on cash, we'll waive our fee. And we tied all of our fees to we'll waive our fee if we can't get you to 4% cash on cash because then it's our responsibility if we're picking something that's good on the front end. It's our responsibility if we're picking something that's going to cash flow. It's our responsibility if we're picking you something that's hot garbage, then we're going to have to deal with that for 5 to 7 years in our business management contract. So that's unique. And then the way we square that peg, because you're like, that sounds like a great way, Jeremy, to go out of business. The way that we square that peg is we say, in exchange for us taking some of the risk alongside you, we get 20% of the appreciation when it's all said and done, right? Or 30% of the appreciation when it's all said and done. Depending on how much risk you want us to take, we get 20 or 30% of the upside from here. You get everything you put in back, but then we split the upside. What that did was it made it so that we were picking properties that had to appreciate. And so when my company like helps you buy a piece of property, we don't know if you're going to hire us for business management or not. And so the way we look at properties, if it doesn't cash flow 4% net, then we're going to lose some money. And if it doesn't appreciate, we're going to lose some money. And so we really have to be careful when we're picking. And even if you hire us to just help you find it and then you take it and you manage it, that's fine with us. We still get paid our fee, but it makes us so careful when we're picking properties that it eliminates us just passing off shit. My apologies. Like just this total shit and like grenading people's portfolios. And that was a really important piece of the Bedrock story. It's, hey, we would love to be part of the story for the next 5 to 7 years, but the way we're going to be part of that story is if it doesn't perform, we will feel pain. And so it changes how we buy. And because it changes how we buy, we typically buy really good stuff. Yeah, but that's our fundamental difference in the offering is we tie all of our returns to property performance, and very few do. Anyone who wants to stay in the asset class that they understand, anyone who wants to break it up into small pieces, maybe that's going to need to draw down on that over the next 5 or 7 years, keep their taxes. Anyone like that, I'm happy to have a conversation. We're actually having great luck in the Airbnb space right now. Like if you watch any stuff on the channel, we're rehabbing this big, beautiful 6,000 square foot house. It has its own sliding rock. Like it has a 500-foot long sliding rock, this big granite monolith thing. And it goes right into two ponds on the back of it. We just found it because we were searching like crazy for this $4 million 1031 exchange. And we walked onto this property and I called the client. And I was like, you've either got to buy a ticket to come see this property today, or you've got to write an offer on this property today. And so we bought this property for 1,060,000 out of his 4 million. And then we just barely had it appraised, and it appraised for 3.7 million because it's this one of one. It's this unicorn thing. And that's a 1031 exchange. He's going to own this asset. It's like perfect for a wedding venue. It's got 5 structures on the property. I just think there's so much real estate that's better in the market than Northern California, than this house that was built in the 60s that's renting for $4,500 a month. It's worth $1.5 million, $2.5 million. I just saw so much of that. And I was like, hey, there's got to be better than this out there.
It's funny you say that, Jeremy. I had a friend and I play basketball with him all the time. And he finally, we asked each other what we do. And I told him, and he's all, yeah, because I have these properties in Tahoe that they're older, but they're worth a lot. And I'm just tired of going up there to manage it during the winters because it costs too much and the HOAs and this, that. And he exchanged out of it into a property in Arizona that was just like a retreat, like you said. And he's like, dude, this was the best thing I ever bought. I don't rent it out all the time. I Airbnb it, and maybe 14 days out of the month, I am doing quadruple of what I did in Tahoe. And now the value, because he had a smaller Tahoe property, I bought it at 1.3. It's worth 2.7 in three
Yeah.
years. And he
Yeah.
was just as happy as a clam. I go, if you buy it in the right, and I think he did it in Scottsdale, and he couldn't stop raving about it. He sent me the link if you want to stay here, and it's huge and has all the
Yeah.
bells and whistles. And it's funny. I mean, there are so many different things you can do in a 1031 exchange. There's so many different clients. And so that's why when you ask me, what do people normally do? It's, oh my God, what did they do last month? We see 400 of these a month, and I'm just trying to think of what they're all going into it. And it's so different, Jeremy. It is so different because
Yeah.
people are so different. Their comfort level is so different. Their age is so
True.
different. And then when they're married, it's two people. And I've had the call where it's, I don't want that. I want this. And it's just, wow. And I'm almost like a mediator when it comes to, or if it's a marriage or if it's multiple owners on a property. And it's just, okay, it's interesting. It's really, I never thought it was what it really is. And I tell people all the time, why do people do 1031 exchanges? That's the big number one question there. Why do they even do it? And number one answer I hear is to avoid capital gains tax. And I tell them, I go, no, that's not why they do it. If you want to avoid the taxes, don't sell the property. People do a 1031 exchange to get something that's better for them in their lives right then and there. Whether it's better cash flow, whether it's leaving where they're at, whether it's a different property type, whether it's a dream home or a vacation home, all the reasons are so different. And sometimes it's just because they hate owning with their siblings or their other partners and they just can't handle it anymore. There's just so many different things that happen out there. And it's funny when you talk to sellers that maybe 3 sellers own the same property and they all want to do something different.
Yeah, no, it's true. One of the things that we love about single family is, let's say you had a $2 million house and we go out. Right now we're buying between 220 and 275, right? So those numbers are insane to California because you can't even buy a lot. Might be able to buy a lot. But like we're buying very actively between kind of 220 to 275 in Oklahoma City, Bentonville, Arkansas, Memphis, Tennessee, Northern Charlotte, Ocala, Florida, right? So we're buying in 5, 6 markets. We were buying in Orlando, but everything priced out. The GRM stopped working. We were buying a lot more in Memphis. But again, we priced out, the GRM stopped working. And so we're always looking for markets. Hey, where does the cash on cash work? Because we're really playing the cash on cash game. The appreciation's the cherry on top in our book, right? And so we look at all that. One of the things we like the most is, hey, you take this $2 million property, you chop it up into eight, right? You go get four properties in Charlotte, you get four properties in Oklahoma City. So you're now diversified as far as rental markets. It's not, hey, if Charlotte has a bad jobs report or whatever, you're not going to lose tenants all over. So we're able to diversify their risk position. Beyond that, if as they move forward, if their plan was ever, hey, I want to liquidate these as I move into assisted living, I want to liquidate some of this asset, it's hey, you don't have to just keep going and borrowing against it. You can sell one of those eight homes, right? And you can break your taxable events up into different years instead of having it all in one big year. You can break your taxable event up. If your number one goal was, hey, I don't want to get windfall tax for $1.9 million. If you break it up into multiple pieces, you can break up your tax situation a little bit and manage that during your life. Because a lot of these people, they don't really have enough money for long-term and chronic care when it comes to that, right? They're going to have to tap this asset at some point. And for most of those people, it's through debt. Right. And so by breaking it up into actual different assets, it can go to different heirs. You can put a different, hey, you're on these Oklahoma properties, you're on these Indianapolis properties. We've really found that like single family residential is a bit flexible in those regards. And so it's just everything. Everything's got its benefits, its pros and cons.
Jeremy,
My
I think that's a great point because okay, so when we talk about the DST, and I talk to people about this all the time, and when they're in their 70s and 80s, and I explain to them, I go, look, this asset is awesome, but if you're looking to dictate when you sell it because you need to, it's not for you. If you're looking to refinance and take money out, you can't do that. If you're in a position where this is where all your money is, and I think that's an excellent point that you bring up, long-term care depending upon how bad you are, could be anywhere from 6,000 to 20,000 a month. You will go through everything very quickly, and you may not have the means. And in an asset like a syndication, you can't get that money out. And like you mentioned, if you have it in a diversified portfolio and it came from an exchange, instead of paying taxes on the lump sum, if you do it incrementally, then you will not hit the higher tax brackets. And so it could prove advantageous. So there's, again, and I tell everyone this from the start, from that, even before you list the property for sale, okay, where are you in your life? What are you looking for? What do you want? These are things that make sense for you for the following reasons, but also keep in mind this can happen in your life. And long-term care is no joke.
It is no joke. Like we did a 1031 exchange, I'm gonna say in 2018, 19. She sold a $2.1 million property. We helped her buy 12. So we bought four or five properties in Indianapolis, four or five properties in Charlotte, two properties in Florida, something like that. That was like the mix, right? Number one, like on a 1031 exchange, we got 45 days to identify. So unless you're working with a team, there's no way you can, like what I call it is a 1031 down exchange, right? We're going from one asset into multiples, right? And you can't 1031 a $2 million California single family residential in Palo Alto into a property in Asheville, North Carolina, unless you're buying a McMansion. I don't want a McMansion. I want a rental asset. I want the maximum number of renters and the maximum number of first-time home buyers to coincide so that my exit strategy isn't just I got to sell to some fund that only buys rentals. I want the maximum number of first-time home buyers when I'm coming out. And there's no way to do that in Northern California because the price tag's too big, right? You've got to go buy multiple properties in a market where the price points are just lower. Now, I like that because it diversifies the risks and it lets us have an exit strategy on the other end where we can sell those off. Well, this client, we bought 12, right? And over time, she has drawn down that portfolio. I think she's at five now. So over the next 7, 8 years, she sells off like one property a year. She pops 200 grand into her account. She doesn't screw up her Medicaid horribly. She doesn't screw up her Social Security horribly. She doesn't blow her taxable income to hell to all of a sudden, like she sells one property a year and she's slowly drawing down on these assets, which she was going to have to do anyways, but she was going to have to do it with loans. And loan qualifications, when you have one asset that's not producing good cash flow, it's virtually impossible. She was in a real spot. Like she was in a
And
real
her interest rate's not attractive right now either. There's so many points to this. There's so many different tangents. And again, that's why I'm not their financial planner, but I don't like somebody coming to me, okay, we're in contract. I was told to call you. We want to do a 1031 exchange. What's that? And I'm like, oh no. Okay, I'm going to ask you a series of questions, and now you and your real estate team need to figure it out quickly.
Yeah.
And good
Well,
luck.
we haven't brought that up on this call. Why are there the time requirements? Let's make sure everyone understands. What are the time requirements to a 1031 exchange? How do you screw it up?
Let's go through that. I think again, you screw it up by not planning in advance. But let's say you planned it in advance. This is what you have to adhere to. These are the Internal Revenue Code guidelines. Number one, the 1031 exchange account must be set up prior to the close of the transaction. If that is not done, you are a taxpayer. So don't just think I have 45 days to identify and 180 days to close. No, the moment you accept an offer, someone like myself needs to be in the mix to put together legal documents that allow us to act as the seller on your behalf. We are the qualified intermediary. That is absolutely mandatory. Forget about the timelines if you do not do this. Okay, let's say that you've already done something like that, have everything set up, and then the close of the transaction occurs. That's what triggers the clock, not when you accept an offer, but when you actually close on the transaction and now you no longer own the property. That is day one, that day. You have 45 calendar days. That means every single day counts. Don't think because it's the 4th of July or a weekend or Jeremy's birthday that you get an extra day. That does not happen. You have 45 calendar days to identify in writing to us exactly what you're going to purchase, and it has to be specific. From day 45, you have an additional 135 days to close on it. So the whole time frame is 180 days, but to me, the critical time frame is that first 45 days. You have a month and a half to figure it out. That's why, again, you want to figure out what you're going to do prior to listing. You want to figure out what you're going to do while you're in contract. I mean, really start to get aggressive on it and complete it within those timeframes. Otherwise, it doesn't work and you fail.
For sure, for sure. I would bet, I'm just gonna guess. 15% of the people call you after they've closed and they think they got 145 days. Or they think 45 days. They've already closed. They're like, hey, I've got 45 days. Let's do this.
Not that
Just call me.
high.
Oh,
I
yeah?
probably get about 2 calls a week where somebody wants to open up an exchange and they've already closed escrow and they're a taxpayer, or they want to do a reverse exchange and they already purchased the property and closed and it's too late. I mean, again, keep this in mind. Do not close on any property that you are looking to sell or purchase in a 1031 exchange without the legal documents being put in place and signed by the actual seller, buyer, and put together by the qualified intermediary. Otherwise, there is no 1031 exchange. So it's not that high, Jeremy. That would be really bad. If we're doing like 400 of these a month, then you're talking 60 calls on something like this. But I would say it's about 2 a week, 2 to 3 a week. So that's still a very high number. I blame the real estate professionals involved when something like this happens the majority of time, just because they don't have the experience. But it's sad when that call happens because especially out in California, when you have gains of $1 million or $2 million, and now you have to pay 600, 700,000 in taxes, and you wanted to do an exchange, it sucks really
That's
bad.
terrible. That's
It
a
does
bad day.
happen. It does happen, and I have good bedside manner, but it's still a horrible conversation to have because they're saying, "Whose fault is this?" It's not James's fault.
I can tell. I don't know whose fault it is, but I know who fault it's not. This guy.
If the realtor's referring them to me, I don't want to throw them under the bus, but at the
Yeah.
same time, I'm just saying I really don't know, but this needed to be done prior to the close.
Yeah. No, that's wild. I just can't imagine. I sat down with the doctor the other day and just a little outpatient thing. I'm 42 things happen. But I had this little outpatient thing and he's like, yeah, no, I just sold my building that my practice was in. I've actually got the check right there in that drawer. He's like $1.7 million. And I was like, why didn't you do a 1031 exchange? And he's, oh, I just don't know what they are. And I didn't want to mess with it. I just wanted to pay my $600,000 in taxes. And I was like, whoa. I'm like, whoa. I was like, I run it like, okay, this is too late. You got to check. It's over for this. You're a taxpayer, as you say. I was like, but you could have easily bought 2 or 3, 4 houses in retirement. I'm like, would that have been your goal? And he and I were getting friendly at that point. And he's like, yeah, I should have done that. He's like, I wanted the cash flow. I didn't want the hassle. I wish I would have known about your company because he just
Was
didn't.
it,
And the
it was
truth
a
is,
doctor? It was a doctor, Jeremy.
yeah, he was a doctor.
Yeah, we see doctors quite often. They're very clever at what they do, but when it comes to real estate, it's just not their craft.
And that's it. That's the reason I liked this call. Like the reason my assistant was helping me, and I was like, hey, I just want someone in Southern California who does this and who's comfortable chatting and answering and getting people more aware of this. Because candidly, let me phrase this in a non-insulting way. Do you feel like the people who are benefiting from 1031 exchanges, that benefit is representative to society, like it's representative? Or do you feel like it migrates to like top income earners or migrates to, do you think it's like a benefit that everyone enjoys equally?
I think the top income earners have more of a benefit from this because they usually have a team in place that's going to alert them of the opportunities of what to do. And you're going to have the other person who is not top income, maybe even middle class, and they just own a lot of real estate, but have never sold anything in their lives and they just don't know. And then the other investor that it's new to them as well. Those people, I really take my time on educating all their options. Because to me, I really don't care what they get into, but I want them to understand their options because they sometimes think one thing and it's not that. But to answer your question, I think the top income earners, about 85% of the time, have a team in place that will know you need to do this. We need to figure this out, and we're going to make something happen. Now, they may not have the best team, but at least they know that something has to be done.
No, I agree. When there was that challenge to the 1031 in the Biden administration, the last Biden administration, and they started talking about maybe possibly eliminating the 1031 exchange completely, except on primary residences, that affects my business. Like we do a lot of 1031. We are the other end of the equation, right? People are 1031 into bedrock properties. And I looked at it, I was like, they may be able to get this passed just because there's so few people benefiting from it. And the people benefiting from it are the top income earners, people who are savvy enough to know that's the way you do it to benefit from the tax law. And I was like, they may be able to get this passed. But really, even under that proposal, it was saying, hey, we're gonna limit the 1031 exchange to $500,000. So that brings me, what do you think is going to happen in the future of 1031 exchanges? Like you're probably way more plugged into that market as far as legislation and legality and changes. What do you think's coming to the market?
I will tell you this, in my 27-year career, every single president has tried to eliminate or limit the 1031 exchange in one proposal or another. President Trump was actually successful in eliminating personal property exchanges back in 2017 with the Tax Cut and Jobs Act. And we were actually 2 votes away from losing real property exchanges. Now, is there an immediate threat to it? No, there is not. I will tell you that over the past, God, it's got to be probably 12 years now, we have got we've been in front of every single congressman out there, and some are wiser to this than others, but they all know what a 1031 exchange is. And I'm glad you brought up the Biden proposal to limit it to 500,000. All congressmen unanimously said take 1031 exchange out of that proposal. We do not want that. The chairman of House Ways and Means is Michael Thompson out in Napa in Northern California. I've been to a few of his spaghetti dinners, had time to talk to him. He's a very big 1031 advocate. Some congressmen, I could tell you some very interesting stories of the conversations we've had and their knowledge of 1031, but that's a sidebar. But to give you the update on 2025, unanimously as of last year or the last couple of years, every congressman is behind keeping 1031 because people need to understand the reason why they want to limit or eliminate the 1031 exchange is they think people are just going to sell, cash out, and pay taxes. If you eliminate the 1031 exchange and raise taxes, because that was a thing they had in conjunction, people are not going to sell. When people do a 1031 exchange, there's a couple of things that happen that benefit many different people, organizations, what have you. Before you sell the property, usually you fix it. So you're going to have contractors coming in to do things. That kind of moves the economy. Then you have a realtor. Then you have an escrow officer or a closing attorney. Then you have a buyer that comes in there and does stuff as well. But you also had an appraisal done and other inspections. And oh, wait, they did a 1031 exchange. So you had a qualified intermediary. Oh, wait, they're buying something else. And the buyer also who bought that property is getting the property taxes reassessed to current value. So there were so many different things. And we had Ernst & Young do a huge study showing them how beneficial it truly is to the economy. I think they finally understand it. We don't take it lightly, Jeremy. We're in Washington all the time. We just came back from Washington earlier this week. The president of our firm and a couple of my colleagues were out there talking to congressmen, making sure that 1031 exchange is not involved in any proposal. And as far as we are concerned, we're always going to be on top of this, but there is no immediate threat to changing it in any way currently.
No, I totally agree. I agree with every point you just made. Like every single point you just made. Because if the 1031 is eliminated, even though it can be demonized, and I think it can be demonized. Like part of my gripe, I'm what you would call like a rabid moderate when it comes to my politics. I sit in the middle and argue with both sides because I think both sides really just get more and more polarized as the years go by. But it's easy to demonize 1031 to be like, hey, this only benefits rich people with advisors, right? It's at the expense of the poor and the middle class. That's the argument I hear all the time against, right? But what people aren't saying is, if you eliminate the ability to get out of this property without getting just your ass handed to you as far as taxes go, and we are talking like a $2 million property, a $700,000 tax bill, right? If you eliminate the opportunity to 1031 out, all you're left with is step up in basis, right? And so then it's just okay, then everyone is locked in. It's okay, I would have sold this, I would have improved, I would have hired contractors, I would have hired a 1031 custodian, I would have paid realtors, I would have moved to another market, I would have paid my state income taxes. But instead of any of that, like economic activity and action, I'm just going to hold on to this thing until I die. That's the only exit. Or I'm going to eat the enormous frog all at once because I have to eat the enormous frog and I'm going to just sell it and get murdered. I agree with you. I think it actually provides enormous financial mobility, but I don't think that people who are trying to demonize it even realize any of those facets exist.
They don't. We educated them, and I'm not kidding. I'd say more middle class to below middle class people do 1031 exchanges than the extremely wealthy. Now, the extremely wealthy have the larger sales prices and the larger assets. We do so many small assets of people that made 100,000. They don't want to lose 30 of it because that 30 is going to work better for the next asset that they buy into. There are just so many different examples where it's not some crazy sales price or some crazy, extremely wealthy principal that owns the asset. There are those, but then if you blend it all together, they're not the majority. And farmers, when you really look at the code, farmers were the ones that were doing this the most. And they're usually not wealthy either. Unless their land's worth a lot, they're not. And they're struggling each month, each year, depending upon how the water supply is and weather and what have you.
I wouldn't wish, like, I've looked at the economics of enough farmers to realize, hey, if you want to live on the raggedy edge and just praying for rain every year for the rest of your life, farmers live on the land, so their mortgage is their farm and their home. As man, I that is a that's a faith-based way to live of just hoping that it works out. And with
If
what you're saying with water supply and drought, especially in your region where it's all kind of Colorado River and water shares, like that is a scary way to live.
Jeremy, I have met with the different farm bureaus and I've spoken to all of them. And they're amazing stories. And somebody who's 45 years old and a farmer is more like 75 to 80 years old because their body is spent. That is a very hard trade. It is. I respect them so much for what they do and what they put their bodies through. And I have met a lot of their children. They're like, don't tell dad, but there is no way in hell I am doing this farm thing when they're gone. We are getting rid of it. It's so difficult to run and do. So when they sell and they 1031 exchange, the older they are, the more often they do not buy into another farm. They're going into something completely different.
No, I totally get it, and I agree. Like you look at a someone who's been a 45-year-old farmer who's been doing it for 20 years,
Ugh,
they have 50 years worth of age on their body.
it's
I
tough. It's so I've seen them. And I've seen them with the limp, with the walk, with the everything. And they're all, what are you talking about? It's a good day today. I'm like, oh, what's a bad day? I'm like, whoa.
So like this hip is moving great this morning.
Yeah. And
Yesterday
I'm
with
like,
the
what?
weather, you're like, oh,
Yeah,
that is not awesome.
yeah,
All
that's
right,
not a giddy up.
so as we're coming in on a landing, let's talk tariffs. Tariffs are the big topic of the week. I dropped a big thing on our channel that I own a Band-Aid company. And that's just what I do. I just like starting companies. But we own a bandage company that imports directly from China. So we dropped like an hour and 10-minute video last week talking about all of the impacts to our import sheet, our tariff sheet, all the way through what our profitability is on a single bandage, what tariffs do to that profitability. And then we talk that through like employment, what that does to our employment, what we think as far as like repatriating bandage production to the USA. How does the hot button issue of the day affect 1031 exchanges? How does tariffs affect your business?
Stay tuned would be a very good answer. I really don't know how it's going to roll out, to be honest. You saw how the stock market just plummeted and then rebounded, and how it's impacting. What we've seen historically, real estate is a more consistent investment. And we've seen most of our investors stay in that sector. Weird enough, though, the first part of this week wasn't that busy. And the last part of the week was a lot busier, but there's no way, in my opinion, that can correlate. That's just too quick. But we have had some people that were looking to set up a 1031 exchange that were just too worried. So I think what it's done so far is created fear for the investor in terms of the 1031 market. If there is significant gains, no one still wants to pay taxes. I think it's still going to be a very strong real estate push to go into a more conservative asset as a replacement property that may not get impacted as much. I really don't know that answer, Jeremy. You'll have to contact me in like 3 months to see how it really impacted. I will tell you this, because COVID was the best years that we've ever had in my 27-year career. It was just crazy for real estate. And then it became a normal market when interest rates increased, because the investor doesn't care about interest rates as much when it comes to 1031s, because they have so much equity coming in and their loans aren't that large. And sometimes there aren't loans. But last year to this year, 1031 wise, we've increased 20%. I want to see how the tariffs are going to impact last year's numbers to this year's numbers moving forward. How is it going to impact our industry? From what we've been told, not much, because we're real estate investments. But I think it's really interesting when you look at everything when it comes to developers and how this may impact the whole builder sector. I really don't know. It's more of a stay tuned. I've been listening to others to get their input on this.
Yeah, I in my head I was like, how would it affect him? I wonder if James is going to have any opinion on this. Because, for example, we just had a bid come in for a renovation. We're doing a big rehab. It's $1,060,000. And that bid's good. When it looked like Canada was going to have 30, 40% tariffs, we were like, wait, we got to wait a second. With the bandage reorder we've just been doing. So we just bought like $25,000 worth of bandages. We were like circling in on our final reorder. And I texted my business partner this morning and I said, you got to wait. Like at 145% tariffs, that means we're going to buy $25,000 worth of product from China. It's going to import, and our tariff sheet's going to be $40,000. And so in that business, it's a specific like holding pattern freeze. Like we're just going to sell the inventory we have on hand. We're both going to stop taking distributions, and we're just going to wait, because 145% tariff doesn't make sense. I can't take my Amazon price from $24.95 on a box of bandages to $60 a box and expect to sell any that makes sense. And so it really has put like a freeze on our reordering process, but I didn't know if it would affect 1031
Well,
exchanges as
I
much.
thought about that as well. And I was talking to one of my colleagues. I'm like, okay, dude, how does this impact us? Because if properties are already done and completed and there's no work needed and you're just looking to trade into different assets, does that really impact sellers looking to unload an asset that no longer makes sense into something that does make sense, especially if the asset they have is going to need work in the future and they don't want to deal with anything? It's a very stay tuned to find out, which is, I don't like giving that answer, but I don't really know how it
Think that's
impacts.
real.
I don't know how it impacts the 1030, unless they're looking to buy product that's still being built and needs those numbers. And we do
Yeah.
have some of those. It's an interesting question. I don't know, Jeremy. I can't give you anything that my answer today could change next week. But
No, for sure. Okay, okay, so let's shift gears as we come in on a landing, and you can bail whenever you need. We're at 57 minutes right now,
I'm good.
but
Just
yeah, I
whatever.
just like to get to know people and try to get, we've all got life experiences, right? We've all got value, but I've realized the hard things I went through have been more beneficial than any of the successes, right? Getting rags to riches my first time, when that thing blew up, like we were rehabbing houses in 2008, and really like 2006, 2007, 2008, it looked like we had the world by the tail. Like I was young, I was like 27, and we were starting to make really some money. And then 2008 happened, the whole market tanked. And it just ripped these shirts right off our backs. Like it was like, and everything gone. So we had to restart at 29, the first restart, the first rags to riches to rags. But I look back at it now and I'm like, I would have been an intolerable ass had I stayed that wealthy and that successful that young. And it just made me a different guy. It just made me a different person. It gave me a whole ladle full of humility and understanding that like, hey, everyone's life isn't gonna go perfect. These people who are like, they hit their first million right out of the park, their first 10 million right out of the park, and then they become these like uncontrollable ego monsters. I was like, you just have not been served a ladle of this yet in your life. If you can share anything that's, hey, what have you gone through in your life that's made you, this is the person I am because I've gone through this thing that made me that type of person.
I
If you're
think,
okay sharing anything like that.
yeah, no, that's cool. Growing up with a blue collar dad and a white collar mom, I think that really taught me a lot. Those two different perspectives really teach you work ethic, value in education, but at the same time, not undervaluing day-to-day stuff and being able to take care of yourself. I think that really has proved beneficial over my lifetime. And I think my parents' mentality, and I'm in my 50s, so they came of the age of 30-year loans, pay off the loan, don't get something that you can't afford, stay within this criteria. And like you, oh 08, 9, 10, 11 were really difficult years. But because I had that mentality, we were able to barely survive. And we saw a lot of our friends just spending the money and thinking that it was going to last forever. But I think through following what my parents taught me, we managed to make it barely through those years and keep that level. Because I think if I, like you said, just became a complete ass because of the wealth you're amassing, I would have hated myself. And I think that brought many people back down to earth those years, but it kept me grounded as well. And it got me through my 30s in a good way and created who I am now in my 50s. And hopefully, and it's hard to get my daughter to have that same kind of mentality, but I can't speak for millennials. They're different.
I listen and watch a lot of Scott Galloway. He's an NYU professor who like talks large scale econ and large scale tax policy. And one of the things he says that it just hits me wrong every time. He's like, hey, my 30s was like I was working 200-hour weeks or whatever. And it cost me my hair and my first marriage, and both were worth it. And now he's worth hundreds of millions. He's worth hundreds of millions. And in the back of my mind, I'm like, it's only worth it because you managed to hit one of these home runs that went well. You didn't get sick. You didn't get cancer in the middle of this and end up alone and broke, right? You didn't get hit with any of the other things in life that can happen. Your parents didn't get super sick right then on top of you. Your kids didn't get super sick right then on top of you. You didn't end up like getting sued by some weird ass thing. I'm like, there's so much of life that's, hey, if I lose the personal, how if I was worth $100 million, maybe I would feel the same way. But there's no guarantee that the financial is going to work every time. And in my experience, there's going to be as many setbacks as not, especially in entrepreneurship, right? I've chosen like a big swing, big miss life. But for me, I've really had to accept, hey, there are fundamentals in this life that are more important than money because the money really can come and go. And I've had to just really accept that, hey, the time I'm spending with my kids isn't wasted time, it's invested time. The time I'm spending with my wife isn't a distraction. It's a primary focus of, hey, when I'm 75 years old, I'm not going to care about the extra $30,000 I could have closed this month. When I'm 75 years old, I'm going to be looking at my beautiful brown-eyed wife and talking about all the memories we have when we sold everything we had and bought an RV and went and traveled the country for a year and a half because we're never going to get those years with my babies back,
Never.
and they'll be priceless. Yeah. So for you, what are you trying to focus on more in your life along those lines to make sure you have a fulfilling life, not just a fulfilling career?
It's interesting that you brought that up. We went to Hawaii in January and we were with a group of people in similar age group, and we were having conversations at the table of what you're thankful for and what you're looking forward to doing in the future. And everybody had to say something. And I told people, I go, I really like where I am, but I'm also thinking about what I want for my future. And I don't want to be in the rat race the whole time. But what I really don't know is how much money do I need to make before I can call it quits? And I really don't know what that number is, Jeremy, because you
Yeah.
have to plan for so many different things. I'd love to take my family without really having a hard time stomaching it to Europe or something like that when we want to go. Going forward, I do this job because I really love helping people preserve their equity and go into something better. I've had many people call me back saying, "You saved me. You told me that there's different things that you can do. You put me in touch with the right people." All that kind of, I love doing that. But I'd like to create a retirement path for my family where we can just enjoy the latter years. And that's kind of like a focus of mine. I just still do not know that number. And there's so many different things that you can plug in. There's so many different apps that you can do. But it's my focus is what can I do to keep my family happy and so we can still enjoy life. And the one thing that I really can't account for is I really don't know about long-term care because if anything goes wrong, I've just seen so many horror stories with my immediate family, with my wife's immediate family, and then just with people in general. And it just can be brutal.
You're absolutely right. That was my experience in financial advice. The thing that destroys net worth in financial advice, if I was sitting down with someone and if they were not going to be in a position to do anything as far as putting assets away, the first words out of their mouth were going to be, I just got out of a brutal divorce, right? Like 40s, 50s, 60s. If they were like, hey, I just got out of a brutal divorce, I knew right then the assets were spoken for or wrecked because it has an ability to just chew up your assets in a way that's hard to describe. And it affects people's work and their energy, their productivity. They lose jobs, they relocate. Like a divorce can really jack up your situation. I have seen through a decade in financial advice. But beyond that, long-term care can jack up a retirement. If you want to talk about chewing through your assets, going and looking at long-term care places and they're like, hey, to get in the door, because we have a year waiting list, to get in the door, it's a $350,000 upfront payment and it's $20,000 a month for care. It's whoa, that is going to scramble your nest egg in a hurry, right? You're going to end up with a whole different situation. And so I agree with you. I don't know if there is a good answer for that because health insurance costs, long-term care costs are going up so fast. And there's such a lack in that industry. There's such a lack of people providing that service. I agree with you. My goal is put 7 or 8 zeros behind a number and then call it good once we're there. But I don't envy anyone who's retirement planning right now, specifically because of health and long-term care. I think those two things are terrifying variables that are really almost impossible to do. So you gotta work until you're okay. And again, going back to family, have some kids who are willing to take care of you when you're old. You can be with them for a long period of your elderly years who actually like you as a person. Don't burn down your relationships with your kids because if we're all thinking that 30 years from now when we're retiring that Social Security and Medicaid are going to be there the same way they are for my parents today, I think that's just a fool's errand. We're borrowing 40 cents on the dollar. We're $32 trillion in debt. I do not think that the social contract that my parents have enjoyed will be there for me. I'm 42. We'll see if I'm proven wrong. But I think you're absolutely right. You've got to look at those variables and just prepare for them as well as you can.
Or you could be like my dad, and this is what he says all the time. Something goes wrong with me, just give me the pill. And I'm like, Dad, don't say that. He's like, he says it all the time, Jeremy. This is not, again, this is the blue collar mentality. He's like, nope, we're not doing that. I don't want to be there. If I can't do certain things, just give me the pill. And I think that's where long term gets really expensive and your life doesn't really become a life that you enjoy anymore. Like, I can't say that myself, but he's just adamant about it. It's just so weird to hear.
If I'm honest with you, James, that's how I feel. I
Yeah.
always felt that way. And it's in my life, who knows? We all have a different relationship with death and life. But my mom died when I was really young, and I had a really good friend die the same month. And so I was a pallbearer twice at 15 years old, my mother and a really good friend. And it just became really clear to me like, we're not all rich, we're not all poor, we're not all healthy, we're not all sick, we're not all, Americans, we're not all Venezuelans. Every single one of us is born and every single one of us is going to die. It's the only thing we really all have in common. None of us are getting out of here alive. And so I really, from young, accepted that's part of life. And my wife hates it. My wife hates it. I'm always just, man, you're not going to blow everything over me. Just check, please. I'll walk towards the light very happily if it all goes to hell for me, because I believe there's something after life, and I live a life of some level of Christianity. And I hope there's something after this life, but yeah, I wouldn't want my family to destroy everything that we've worked our whole lives building to put me in long-term care where I couldn't. Yeah, I get your dad's point of view, but it's a very strange point of view, and my wife hates it too. So don't feel bad. My wife hates it too.
I will end on this. I agree with him to a certain point. If it's to a point where everything is pain and you can't move, yeah, maybe then. But if everything is still good and you just need a little bit of assistance, I disagree. But to each their own. And he's my dad. I'm going to respect and love him no matter what.
I agree with you. I don't know where his level is, and maybe his level is at an unhealthy level, but I agree with you. If the
It
quality of
depends
life
what
is
day of the
there,
week it is, then the story changes. So, like, it depends on how he feels.
as long as that. Okay, last question. What is one piece of advice you'd give to your younger self? If you were to look at 19-year-old James, what's one piece of advice you would give him?
You know what I would have loved to have done when I was younger is spend more time with my parents than I did. They used to go on trips quite often, whether it's Europe, they did a safari, they different areas of the world. And I always would have rather just stayed and had fun with my friends. And I think I missed out on at least 12 to 15 years of opportunities to have magnificent trips with my siblings as well a little bit, but it was more of my parents always saying, "Come along, why don't you do this with us?" And now that my wife and I, more in our 40s and 50s, we go do these things. I go, why didn't I ever say yes to going to France, to going to Spain, to going to Italy, to going to these, like to Australia or whatever? It would have been such a grand experience. And what? So I could have beers with my buddies. I wish I could have changed that. Now that my mom passed a couple of years ago, I really missed out on those opportunities. That's the one thing. Everything else, maybe I could have done things a little bit earlier, but I think I did things at the right time, not too late. Started my career here in my late 20s, so that I'm not mad about that. But yeah, I think that would be the one thing. I wish I would have done more of that family time on the trips. The trips would have been special because those are memories that you just don't forget. That would be awesome. Wish I could have done that.
No, that's very similar to mine. My dad sat me down one time. We were rehabbing a house. It was the second house I'd ever bought. And we were buying the ugliest house on the block and fixing them up with sweat equity. And he sat me down, and we were at a point in my career where we were just starting to make good money, right? And so he sat me down and he saw like how things were going, and he said, "Can I give you a piece of advice?" And I said, "Sure, piece of advice." He's, "Your mother and I paid off a 30-year mortgage in 15 years." He's, "And we saved for retirement." Is we never went to Spain, we never went to Europe. We wanted to, but we just never did. We were saving for retirement. We never went to Hawaii, but I knew she wanted to go and we just didn't because we were saving for retirement. We're going to do that in retirement. We didn't buy super nice cars. We bought nice cars, but never like a new car. And he just went through this list. We never spent time going and doing things with the kids. He has 10 kids. Like he was saving for retirement. And he just looks at me in the eyes and he said, "And she didn't make it." And I just felt it in my soul. I felt the soul of that man, just like she didn't make it. And all these dreams that we had aren't guaranteed, and tomorrow's not guaranteed. So when my wife said, "Hey, let's sell the house and let's sell the rental and let's go buy the biggest RV we can buy and let's go tour the country with our 9-year-old, our 8-year-old, our 5-year-old, and our 4-year-old. Let's go see the country." We spent a month in Yellowstone and a month in Glacier and a month at the Yosemite and a month on the Pacific Coast and 3 months in Sedona. Like we sold our stuff and we went and made memories. And I think of it now and I'm like, Looking back on my life, what would I tell a young Jeremy, like a 19-year-old? It's going to be hard. You're going to get through it. Buy the RV when she asks, right? Because when I'm 75, 80 years old, I know those are going to be the moments that I look back on and I'm like, hey, all that work, whatever, all those businesses, whatever, watching my beautiful little babies kayak over a lake in Utah, and getting bored.
Priceless,
Oh, priceless, priceless
priceless.
stuff. The happiest time I've ever had is family time, and that requires some investment. So that's what I tell my younger self. Buy the RV when she asks.
You
James, I appreciate you so stinking much. I know I emailed out of nowhere. We will keep in touch, all right?
also
And if you're okay with it, I would love to do like a quarterly check-in and see how the market's treating you, see if you're getting people calling you from this interview. I would love to keep in touch. Does that sound fair?
sounds like a plan. We'll get the tariff update in 3 months. I think that would be timely.
I agree with you. I don't think it'll affect you. I'll give you the last word. How do people find you? How do people get in contact with you? Last word, whatever you want to say.
Yeah, basically, I'm the guy that helps the 1031 exchange or makes the 1031 exchange happen. So if you're an investor that has investment property that you're thinking of unloading, I think the time to get in contact with me is before you even put the property on the market. Just tell me what you'd like to do, what you don't like, and I'll let you know if it can happen in a 1031 exchange, and then you move forward. I will tell you this, Jeremy and audience. I talk more people out of doing 1031 exchanges. I do not want a transaction that does not make sense. I only want to give people the service when I think it's necessary. And that's not my call, but I can give you a lot of different pointers on whether or not it would make sense. And if you can't find something better out there, don't do the 1031 exchange. Don't sell the property. Wait till the time's right. Wait till there's something that makes sense for you out there and just contact me in advance and way in advance because you don't want to like be ready to put the property on the market and it doesn't qualify, or you have to do something that you have to season for a year or something like that. So, the piece of advice I would give you if you're an investor that owns investment property that's looking to unload property and retaining all the equity and going into something different, just give me a call. My phone number, you can see that below. Jeremy, you can give the email address to anybody that wants it. And on that note, I look to help. I look to help people moving forward. I'm not retiring anytime soon, even though I thought about that plan, obviously. I think I'm probably 8 to 10 years out of that, but and who knows, maybe longer. But I think that's it. I think that's
All
really
right.
it.
All right, man. Thank you so much. I appreciate it, man. It's been lovely getting to know you. It's been lovely getting to know your industry a little bit more. Thank you for the time. I really appreciate it.
No worries, Jeremy. Have a great weekend.
You too, buddy.
Okay,
Bye-bye.
bye-bye.
All right, I hope you enjoyed that. That's our first podcast. We've been looking at launching one of these, trying to get some professionals into our network who we can get on camera and really drill down with. That is not the last one of those. We have a bunch in the pipeline right now. It's been a big part of the plan on launching the channel is having these podcast style in-depth conversations around investing, around taxes, around real estate strategy, around everything that we do. So you can expect those happening to come to the channel as often as I can cram enough time in to record and have my team edit those. But we're going to be doing those for the Turo business, our 21 car Turo fleet. We're going to be doing those for the Airbnb side of the company we have. We're going to be doing those for Bedrock, buy and hold single family residential 1-year leases. If you enjoyed this content, I've been looking at our catalog to see what else we have that I think you would enjoy. It is one of 3 videos. I released a video that I'll post right here. Never buy rentals here. The number one key to a profitable rental. Now, at Bedrock, we've bought like over 5,000 houses over the years. We've got our box pretty well defined. We know exactly what we want to be buying. We buy that same thing over and over and over. Every time we step outside of our box, we get smacked. And so we've learned, hey, this is what we buy. We only buy this. In that video, I walk people through the way we look at property. Here's how you build a box. Here's how you make that box the same in every single market. Here's how you boil down all the numbers and all the minutia and crap to one number so you can get kind of an apples to apples comparison on what's a good rental and what's not. Never buy rentals here. That's really Bedrock's model, how we build a box, how we define a box, how we take a lot of the risk out of the equation just by buying the same thing over and over and over. We're not fancy. We just buy the same thing over and over and over as many dollars as we've got. All right. If you enjoyed the interpersonal stuff, and I'm always going to try to include that where we're talking about the things that made us who we are and the things that the life advice beyond business, because there's a lot in life that's more important than money. The longer I live, the more I'm convinced there's a lot of stuff more important than money, and that's something I didn't know well when I was younger. So if you're interested in kind of some more interpersonal stuff, I released a video called Work-Life Balance, I Failed Hard. And it's discussing between when I was 29 years old and 39 years old, me getting into a career and working super, super hard and not having the right perspective towards my work-life balance and what it almost cost me. And I try to just be an open book. I try to just be honest with you and say, hey, here's how it felt and here's what it cost me and here's what I learned. If you don't want interpersonal stuff, if you're more looking for kind of more real estate stuff, we're doing an enormous rehab in our area above Greenville, South Carolina. That's like a $2 million rehab on this big gorgeous thing. It's called Enormous Rehab on the channel. If you want to find that video, I'm not going to post it because I can only post one here. But Enormous Rehab, the most insane rehab project we've ever done. It's cool. It's a cool project. It's really in-depth. We walk around the whole thing. We've got the appraisal video coming out, which is wild. It's like the craziest experience. It was a roller coaster ride. But we've got that appraisal video coming out as soon as permits clear because we don't want to mess with permits. So if you're interested in that, never buy rentals here. The #1 key to a profitable rental. If you want to talk interpersonal stuff, work-life balance, I failed hard. Don't sacrifice your family for your career. If you want to look at just something fun that we're doing on the channel, Enormous Rehab. That's a cool video that we just put up. And the last thing that I would say, if you're interested in the channel, I did an hour-and-a-half conversation on a whiteboard that got like the whiteboard of doom. And we just talked about tariffs, how tariffs affect one of our companies. I own a company that produces bandages, imports them out of China. And I tried to walk through how tariffs impact the larger, broader economy. And it was a fascinating video. It's our highest viewed video to date. And so that was Trump's Tariffs Explained. That was a fascinating video. And it just, I get a whiteboard and try to walk through at this level of detail all the tariff stuff that's happening.